The stars looked different when death was coming from them. Commander Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the orbital station Meridian and watched the alien ships approach Earth. 300 massive vessels moved through space like floating cities, their dark hulls gleaming with strange metal that seemed to eat light itself. Each ship was longer than 5 city blocks and taller than the biggest skyscrapers Jake had ever seen. Jake had been a soldier for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The Earth Defense Force had prepared for many things, but not for an alien invasion. Their 50 ships looked like toys next to the approaching fleet. Most of Earth's vessels were old cargo ships that had been quickly fitted with weapons and shields. The military frigates were better, but still small compared to what was coming. Lieutenant Amy Foster worked at the communications station nearby. Her hands moved quickly over the controls as signals poured in from around the solar system. Amy had joined the Defense Force straight from college, and this was her first real mission. She never thought her first mission would be humanity's last fight. "Sir, they are sending a message on all frequencies," Amy said. Her voice stayed calm, but Jake could see the fear in her eyes. The message came through clearly in perfect English. The voice was deep and cold like metal scraping against stone. "People of Earth, we are the Zephyrian Empire. Your world now belongs to us. Surrender and your species will live as our servants. Fight us, and your species will die. You have 1 hour to decide." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people who had joined the Defense Force to protect Earth. Navigator Lisa Park had left her family on Mars to serve here. Weapons Officer Ben Rodriguez had 3 children back on Earth. Engineer Carl Johnson had been working on the station for 5 years and knew every bolt and wire. They all looked at Jake, waiting for orders. Captain Ben Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system from the flagship EDF Valiant. "All Earth ships, this is Ben Rodriguez. Today we show these aliens what humans are made of. We may not have their big ships or fancy weapons, but we have something they do not understand. We have the will to fight for our home." Jake opened a channel to all stations. "This is Commander Martinez. I know our ships are small and our weapons are old. I know we are outgunned and outnumbered, but this is our home, and these are our people. We did not ask for this fight, but we will not run from it. All ships prepare for battle." The hour passed quickly. Earth's leaders tried to negotiate, but the aliens would not listen. They wanted complete surrender or total war. The choice was made for them when the alien fleet opened fire without warning. The first plasma blast destroyed the outer defense satellite in seconds. The explosion lit up space like a new sun. The cargo ship New Hope tried to return fire, but 3 alien dreadnoughts focused on it. Captain Tony Clark and his crew of 30 brave souls died when their ship exploded. The frigate Liberty lasted only minutes against the alien weapons before it was torn apart. Jake watched his friends die and felt anger burn in his chest. The aliens had better weapons and stronger shields, but they did not understand humans. When the Meridian station was hit by plasma fire, Jake did not order retreat. Instead, he ordered his crew to ram the nearest alien ship. "Engineering, give me everything the engines have," Jake commanded. "Weapons, target their main hull. We are going to hurt them." The station accelerated toward a massive alien dreadnought. The aliens seemed surprised that the humans would attack instead of running away. Their return fire damaged the station badly, but could not stop it. When Meridian hit the alien ship, both vessels exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from Earth. All across the battle, human ships did the same thing. When the cargo ship Freedom was dying, Captain Steve Bennett flew it straight into an alien cruiser. When the frigate Victory lost its weapons, Captain Dan Morris used it as a missile against the enemy fleet. The mining vessel Hope rammed 2 alien ships before it was destroyed. The aliens had never seen anything like this. Species they had conquered before would run when their ships were damaged. They would surrender when the battle turned against them. But humans kept fighting even when their ships were broken and burning. They used their dying vessels as weapons and turned retreat into attack. Admiral Crix Var commanded the alien fleet from his flagship. He was 9 feet tall with an exoskeleton that could stop bullets and skin that was harder than steel. He had conquered 17 star systems for the Zephyrian Empire and had never lost a single ship in battle. Today he lost 12 ships to primitive human vessels. These humans fight like mad creatures, General Zekmore reported from another ship. They do not retreat when they should. They do not surrender when they are beaten. They turn their own ships into bombs and fly them at us. Krixvar studied the battle reports on his command screen. The humans had lost every ship in their fleet, but they had damaged or destroyed 12 Zephyrian vessels. No species had ever inflicted such losses on the Empire with such primitive technology. The humans had no chance of winning, but they fought, as if victory was possible. Troublesome insects, Krixvar said, but his voice carried a note of respect that surprised him. These humans were different from other species the Empire had conquered. They fought with intelligence and courage that made them dangerous even when they were outmatched. The battle for Earth's orbital space was over in 4 hours. Every human ship had been destroyed, and the alien fleet controlled the space around Earth. But as Krixvar looked at his damaged ships and read the casualty reports, he felt something he had never felt before in Conquest. He felt uncertain about what would come next. 3 months passed since the alien ships landed on Earth. The Zephyrian Empire had set up command centers in every major city and began counting humans like cattle. Their tall soldiers with metal skin patrolled the streets and their flying machines, watched from above. Most people stayed inside their homes and tried to avoid the aliens, but some humans had different plans. Colonel Lisa Park crawled through the old subway tunnel beneath New York City. The tunnel had been abandoned for 50 years, but now it was home to the human resistance. Lisa had been a Marine for 15 years before the invasion. She knew how to fight, and more importantly, she knew how to hide. The underground tunnels of human cities had become a secret world that the aliens could not control. The aliens are used to fighting in space, Lisa explained to her team in the dark tunnel. Up there they have room to move and use their big weapons. Down here they are too big and their weapons are too powerful for these small spaces. Former Navy SEAL Tony, Clark nodded as he checked his rifle. Tony had fought in 3 wars before the aliens came. He was good at moving quietly and striking fast. The tunnels and sewers of the city were perfect for the kind of fighting he knew best. Their soldiers are 9 feet tall and wear metal suits, Tony said. They move slow in tight spaces and they cannot fit through the smaller tunnels. Dr. Helen Ward worked at a table made from old subway benches. She had been a professor at MIT before the invasion, but now she made bombs from household chemicals and stolen alien parts. Helen was small and quiet, but she was very good at making things explode. Their technology is more advanced than ours, she said while connecting wires to a battery. But advanced technology has more ways it can break. The Resistance had learned that Zephyrian equipment could be disrupted by certain radio frequencies. Helen had built transmitters that could make alien weapons stop working for short periods. It was not much, but it gave human fighters a chance to attack before the aliens could fight back. Engineer Carl Johnson had joined the Resistance after his family was killed in the first bombing. He had worked for NASA before the war and understood complicated electronics. Carl spent his time taking apart captured alien devices to learn how they worked. Their shields operate on predictable patterns, he explained to the group. If we hit them at the right frequency and the right time, we can get through. The Resistance struck at night when the aliens could not see well in the dark tunnels. Zephyrian soldiers would enter the subway system to hunt for humans and simply disappear. The aliens would find empty tunnels and blood on the walls, but no bodies and no survivors. Supply trucks carrying alien equipment would be destroyed by explosions that seemed to come from nowhere. General Zekmore commanded the ground forces for the Zephyrian Empire. He had conquered 12 worlds before coming to Earth and had never faced resistance that lasted more than a few weeks. But these humans were different. Every time we destroy one group of rebels, 3 more appear, he reported to Admiral Krixvar. They use their own cities against us. They know every tunnel and every hiding place. The aliens tried flooding the Bigzo tunnels, but humans had built pumps and drainage systems. They tried using poison gas, but humans had breathing masks and air filters. They sent robots into the small spaces, but humans destroyed them with electromagnetic pulses. Every solution the aliens tried created new problems. Steve Bennett had been CIA before the invasion, and he was very good at gathering information. He watched alien patrols and learned their patterns. Steve discovered that Zephyrian soldiers communicated using sound frequencies that humans could not normally hear. But with the right equipment, humans could listen to alien radio chatter and know where they would attack next. They are getting frustrated, Steve reported during a meeting in an abandoned subway station. Their soldiers are refusing to patrol certain areas. Some of them are asking to be transferred to other planets. They have never dealt with this kind of fighting before. The resistance had grown from a few hundred fighters to several thousand. People who had lost families to the aliens joined the underground war. Former soldiers taught civilians how to fight and hide. Scientists worked with mechanics to build weapons from scrap metal and stolen parts. Even children helped by carrying messages through tunnels too small for adults. Rachel Stone had been a NASA engineer before the invasion. She was very smart with electronics and had been studying wreckage from the space battle. Rachel discovered something important about alien technology. Their hull metal becomes weak when hit with specific electromagnetic pulses, she explained to Lisa's command team. We can hurt their ships if we can get close enough. The discovery changed everything for the resistance. If humans could damage alien ships, then they could do more than just hide and strike at soldiers. They could threaten the aliens where they felt safe. Dr. Helen Ward began working on a new kind of weapon based on Rachel's discovery. We need to build an electromagnetic pulse generator powerful enough to affect their ships, Helen said. It will be dangerous to use, and we can probably only use it once. Meanwhile, the aliens were learning that Earth was not like other planets they had conquered. Other species had fought them in space with ships and technology. When the aliens won those battles, the wars were over. But humans fought differently. They used their cities and their knowledge of their own world as weapons. Every street corner could hide an ambush. Every building could contain a bomb. Every tunnel could lead to a trap. The Zephyrian soldiers began to fear going into human cities. They had conquered species that were stronger and species that were smarter. But they had never conquered a species that refused to accept defeat. Every day brought new attacks and new surprises. The humans seemed to become more dangerous as the occupation continued instead of becoming weaker. Admiral Krixvar studied reports from around the planet. Human resistance was growing in every city and every country. The aliens controlled the surface, but humans controlled everything underneath. Supply lines were constantly attacked. Communication towers were sabotaged. Soldiers disappeared without explanation. Perhaps we should move to the next planet, General Zekmore suggested during one particularly bad week. Leave a small force here and continue our expansion. But Krixvar knew that would be seen as defeat. The Zephyrian Empire had never retreated from a conquered world. To leave Earth would show weakness to other species they had conquered. It might encourage rebellion on other planets. We stay, he decided. We will break these humans eventually. But, privately, Krixvar was beginning to wonder if the humans might break them first. 8 months had passed since the aliens landed on Earth, and the Resistance had learned many things about their enemy. Former CIA operative Steve Bennett brought the most important intelligence to Colonel Lisa Park in the deep tunnels beneath Manhattan. Admiral Krixvar himself would be visiting the New York Command Center in 3 days to oversee a new phase of the occupation. Lisa studied the building plans that Steve had stolen from the alien computer systems. The command center was heavily guarded with energy shields and plasma cannons. Hundreds of Zephyrian soldiers protected the building, and alien aircraft patrolled the skies above it. Getting inside would be almost impossible, and getting out would be suicide. We are not trying to get out, Lisa told her team during the mission briefing. We are trying to send a message to every alien in the galaxy. The team included the best fighters the Resistance had. Tony Clark would handle close combat with his experience as a Navy SEAL. Dr. Helen Ward would use her explosives to create diversions and destroy alien equipment. Carl Johnson would hack into the alien computer network to upload a special program. Rachel Stone would operate the electromagnetic pulse device that could disrupt alien technology. The plan was complex and dangerous. Helen's bombs would destroy the east wing of the building to draw guards away from the command center. During the confusion, Tony and Steve would fight their way through the corridors to reach Admiral Krixvar. Carl would connect to the alien network and upload data that would spread throughout their fleet. Rachel would activate the electromagnetic pulse that would broadcast the signal across the solar system. This is a one-way mission, Lisa reminded her team. "None of us are coming back from this. But what we do here will change everything." The infiltration began 3 days before the Admiral's arrival. Using old utility tunnels and newly dug passages, the team positioned themselves directly under the command center. Helen placed explosive charges throughout the underground area, while Carl identified the main computer connections. Rachel assembled her electromagnetic device in a chamber that had once been a subway maintenance room. At 3 in the morning on the day of the mission, Helen triggered her explosives. The entire east wing of the building collapsed in a roar of falling concrete and twisted metal. Alien guards rushed toward the destruction while emergency alarms wailed throughout the complex. In the chaos, Tony and Steve entered the building. Through a hole blown in the basement wall, fighting through the corridors was brutal and fast. Zephyrian soldiers were larger and stronger than humans, but they moved slowly in the narrow hallways. Tony used his speed and knowledge of close combat to disable alien guards with precise strikes to weak points in their armor. Steve had studied alien anatomy and knew where to place his shots for maximum effect. Carl reached the main computer terminal and began his work. The alien system was more advanced than anything humans had built, but Carl had been studying captured Zephyrian technology for months. His fingers moved quickly over controls that looked like nothing he had ever seen before. Slowly, the alien network accepted his access codes and allowed him into their systems. Admiral Krixvar waited in his command chamber, surrounded by tactical displays that showed Zephyrian operations across the galaxy. The alien commander was massive even compared to other members of his species. His exoskeleton was scarred from battles on a dozen worlds, and his eyes held the cold intelligence of a successful conqueror. "You cannot win this war," Krixvar said calmly when Tony's team surrounded him. The Admiral seemed more curious than afraid. "Your resistance only delays our complete control of your world. We are not here to win," Lisa replied as she entered the chamber with her weapon aimed at the alien commander. "We are here to teach you something about humanity that your empire needs to understand." Lisa activated Rachel's electromagnetic device. The pulse tore through the building's electrical systems and spread outward toward the Zephyrian ships in orbit. But the pulse carried more than just electromagnetic energy. Hidden within the signal was the data package that Carl had uploaded to the alien network. The package contained the complete military history of the human species. Every war fought by humans from ancient times to the present day was included in the transmission. The data showed alien commanders how humans had fought against impossible odds throughout their history. It showed them battles where small human forces had defeated much larger enemies through courage and clever tactics. The information spread through the Zephyrian fleet like a computer virus. Alien officers found themselves reading about human conflicts they had never imagined. They learned about 300 Spartans holding a mountain pass against thousands of Persian soldiers. They read about colonial farmers defeating the most powerful military in the world using guerrilla warfare. They studied how humans had fought in jungles and deserts and cities using any weapon they could find. But most importantly, they learned about human psychology. The data showed that humans became more dangerous when they were cornered, and more determined when defeat seemed certain. Other species fought until fighting became too costly. Humans fought until fighting became impossible, and then found new ways to keep fighting. Admiral Krixvar's command staff watched in growing amazement as the human historical records filled their screens. General Zek Moore studied reports of human soldiers who had fought for days without food or sleep. Commander Velthon read about human pilots who had flown damaged aircraft into enemy ships rather than surrender. "This is impossible," General Zek Moore said as he reviewed the data. "A species this violent should have destroyed itself long ago. How did they survive their own nature?" "They learned to control it," Admiral Krixvar realized as he studied the information. "They turned their violence outward against their enemies instead of inward against themselves. And now, we are their enemies." The data also contained detailed analysis of human military tactics. The aliens learned that humans did not fight like other species. Most civilizations used their strongest forces in direct attacks against enemy strength. Humans attacked weak points and avoided enemy strength. They used deception and misdirection. They made their enemies fight on human terms instead of alien terms. Carl's virus had also unlocked classified Zephyrian military files. For the first time, humans learned the truth about their enemy. The Zephyrian Empire was not as strong as it appeared. They had conquered many worlds, but they had never faced serious resistance. Their military was designed for quick victories against opponents who would surrender when defeat became likely. The psychological profiles in the alien database showed that Zephyrian soldiers were trained for conquest, not for prolonged warfare. They expected enemies to behave rationally, and surrender when continued fighting would only increase casualties. The concept of fighting for principles instead of practical advantage was foreign to their understanding. "Your species fights without logic," Admiral Krixvar said to Lisa as alarms continued to sound throughout the building. "You sacrifice lives for no strategic gain. You resist when surrender would save more of your people." "That is where you are wrong," Lisa replied. "We fight with perfect logic. We fight because the alternative is unacceptable. Not just death, but the loss of our freedom to choose our own future." The electromagnetic pulse had also reached other Zephyrian forces throughout the galaxy. On distant worlds, alien commanders began receiving reports of equipment failures and communication disruptions. But more disturbing were the psychological reports from soldiers who had been fighting humans. The troops were showing signs of stress and confusion that Zephyrian medical officers had never seen before. Rachel's device had broadcast human music and art along with military history. Alien analysts tried to understand human culture and found it completely alien to their own experience. Humans created beauty in the middle of war. They wrote poems about sacrifice and songs about freedom. They made art that celebrated individual achievement while honoring collective effort. The transmission ended with a simple message recorded by every resistance leader around the world. "We are humans," the message said. "We do not surrender. We do not give up. We do not accept defeat. You can kill us, but you cannot make us stop fighting. This is our world, and these are our people. We will resist you until our last breath and beyond." As Zephyrian forces throughout the galaxy processed this information, Admiral Krixvar finally understood what his empire was facing. These humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered before. They were a people who would choose death over slavery and freedom over safety. The electromagnetic pulse that had disabled the New York Command Center carried more than historical data about human warfare. Hidden deep within Carl Johnson's transmission was a computer virus that had taken months to perfect. The virus was based on stolen Zephyrian code and designed to unlock classified files throughout the alien empire's network. As the virus spread through the fleet's communication system, it began opening Imperial records that had been secret for centuries. For the first time, human resistance leaders gained access to information about the true nature of their enemy. Colonel Lisa Park studied the intercepted data from her new command post in an abandoned military bunker deep underground. Former Air Force Colonel Dan Morris had joined the resistance after the aliens destroyed Denver. He was good with military strategy and had been analyzing the alien data for weeks. "They have conquered 47 star systems," Dan reported during a briefing with other resistance leaders. But every single conquest followed exactly the same pattern: space battle, ground invasion, brief resistance, then complete surrender. Dr. Rachel Stone worked at a computer terminal surrounded by alien technology that had been captured or stolen. She had become the Resistance's expert on Zephyrian systems and was shocked by what the classified files revealed. "The longest any species has resisted them was 6 months, Rachel said. The Altarian rebellion lasted that long only because they retreated to polar ice caps, where the aliens could not easily follow. But the most important discovery came from Dr. Helen Ward's analysis of Zephyrian medical and psychological records. Helen had been studying alien biology since the invasion began and had learned to read their scientific data. "They are not just physically different from us," Helen announced to the assembled resistance leadership. "They are psychologically different in ways we never imagined." The medical files showed that Zephyrian brains worked differently than human brains. Individual Zephyrians could think and make decisions, but they were most comfortable when following group consensus. Their entire species operated on principles similar to a hive mind where individual sacrifice for collective benefit was automatic and unquestioned. The concept of individual choice overriding group benefit is literally incomprehensible to them, Helen explained. When we choose to fight instead of surrender, we are acting in ways their minds cannot process or predict. Carl Johnson had discovered something even more significant in the Imperial archives. Working from a hidden computer lab he had built in the subway tunnels, Carl found files that revealed the true history of Zephyrian expansion. Their empire is not expanding because they are conquerors, Carl explained during an emergency meeting. They are expanding because they are running from something. The star charts Carl had decoded showed a pattern that told the real story of the Zephyrian Empire. Every system they had abandoned showed the same progression. The aliens would arrive and consume all available resources within 50 to 100 years. When the planets were stripped of everything useful, the entire population would move on to the next target. They are not building an empire, Carl continued. They are locusts. They consume everything on a world and then move on when there is nothing left to take. This explained why Zephyrian military forces were designed for quick conquest rather than long occupation. They had never needed to truly control a population for extended periods. Previous species had surrendered quickly and been moved to other worlds as slave labor. The aliens had never encountered a species that refused to cooperate with their own conquest. Steve Bennett's intelligence network had been monitoring Zephyrian communications since the electromagnetic pulse had disrupted their security systems. The reports his agents intercepted painted a picture of growing confusion and frustration within the alien command structure. Ground commanders are requesting reinforcements for what should have been a simple occupation, Steve reported. Fleet. Admirals are reporting equipment failures that their technicians cannot explain. The most troubling reports for the aliens came from their own medical staff. Zephyrian soldiers who had fought against human resistance were showing psychological symptoms that their doctors had never seen before. The alien troops were experiencing anxiety, paranoia, and what humans would recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder. They have a word for physical injury but no word for psychological trauma, Helen discovered after studying alien medical texts. Their species has never experienced the kind of mental stress that comes from prolonged warfare against an unpredictable enemy. The virus had also revealed intelligence about other species the Zephyrians had conquered. Most alien civilizations had been contacted years before invasion and given time to prepare surrender terms. The Zephyrians preferred to avoid costly battles by demonstrating overwhelming force and then allowing enemy leaders to negotiate peaceful submission. Every other species they conquered had a unified government that could make decisions for the entire population, Dan Morris noted as he studied the files. When the government surrendered, the war was over. But humans do not have unified global government, and even if we did, most humans would not accept surrender orders from any authority. This fundamental difference in human psychology was causing problems throughout the Zephyrian military hierarchy. Alien commanders were trained to deal with rational opponents, who would calculate costs and benefits before making strategic decisions. Humans made decisions based on principles and emotions that Zephyrian logic could not predict or counter. Commander Jake Martinez had survived the orbital battle and now led a growing fleet of human spacecraft operating from hidden bases in the asteroid belt. The ships were still converted cargo vessels and mining equipment, but they now carried weapons built from captured alien technology. More importantly, they carried crews who had learned to fight like humans rather than trying to copy alien tactics. "We are not trying to defeat their entire fleet," Jake explained to his pilots during a briefing aboard the converted mining ship Defiance. "We are trying to make them doubt their own strength and question their understanding of warfare." Human space tactics had evolved beyond simple resistance into psychological warfare designed to exploit Zephyrian weaknesses. Human fighters would approach alien formations in seemingly suicidal attacks only to change course at the last second and plant electromagnetic mines. The explosions would disable, rather than destroy, leaving alien crews stranded and requiring rescue ships that stretched fleet resources. On Earth, the resistance had grown into a shadow government that controlled vast areas outside major cities. Former government officials like Patricia Wells coordinated global operations from bunker systems that connected resistance cells on every continent. The aliens controlled urban centers, but humans controlled forests, mountains, deserts, and rural areas where most of Earth's resources were located. They can hold the cities, but they cannot feed their army without controlling the countryside, Patricia explained during a video conference with resistance leaders worldwide. We control the farms and the factories and the power plants. They need to maintain their occupation. The classified Zephyrian files had also revealed critical weaknesses in alien technology. Dr. Rachel Stone had achieved a breakthrough that would change the balance of power in the war. Their quantum shields work perfectly against energy weapons, Rachel explained to the technical team. But they were never designed to stop solid projectiles moving at extreme velocity. The solution was simple in concept but difficult to execute. Human railguns powered by captured Zephyrian reactors could punch through alien defenses with ease. But the psychological impact was even more important than the tactical advantage. The aliens had begun to fear human creativity and unpredictability more than human weapons. Reports from Zephyrian commanders throughout the galaxy showed increasing concern about human resistance methods. Alien leaders who had conquered dozens of worlds were requesting guidance on how to deal with an enemy that refused to follow normal patterns of warfare. The very success of the Zephyrian Empire had made them vulnerable to opponents who fought differently than anyone they had faced before. Admiral Krixvar read these reports in his command chamber and felt something he had never experienced in centuries of conquest. He felt uncertainty about the outcome of a military campaign. The humans were not just resisting, they were teaching the galaxy that the Zephyrian Empire could be challenged and that resistance could succeed. Admiral Krixvar stood in the war room of his flagship and studied reports that challenged everything he understood about conquest and warfare. 1 full year had passed since the Zephyrian Empire had invaded the third planet of the Sol system, and the humans were not only still fighting, but seemed to be winning the psychological war. The latest report from General Zekmor on the planet's surface made the situation clear. Resistance activity has increased by 300% in the last month, the general reported. Our soldiers refuse to patrol certain sectors of human cities. Morale among ground forces is at levels we have never seen before. Several units have formally requested transfer to other star systems. This was unprecedented in the history of the Zephyrian Empire. Their military had been expanding across the galaxy for 1,000 years and had never experienced defeat or retreat. The very concept of soldiers refusing orders due to fear was alien to their understanding of warfare. Yet here were veteran troops who had conquered multiple worlds begging to be sent anywhere except Earth. Meanwhile, in orbit around Mars, Commander Jake Martinez commanded a fleet that had grown from hidden survivors of the original battle into a formidable fighting force. The human ships were still converted cargo haulers and mining vessels, but they now carried advanced weapons reverse-engineered from captured Zephyrian technology. More importantly, they carried crews who had learned to fight with human tactical principles rather than trying to copy alien methods. Remember what we learned about their psychology? Jake briefed his squadron leaders before their latest operation. We are not trying to destroy their entire fleet in one battle. We are trying to make them doubt their own superiority and question their understanding of their enemy. Human space tactics had evolved into a sophisticated form of psychological warfare designed to exploit every weakness in Zephyrian thinking. Human fighters would approach alien formations in coordinated attacks that appeared suicidal, but were actually carefully planned to create maximum confusion. Ships would accelerate directly towards Zephyrian dreadnoughts only to veer away at the last possible moment, leaving electromagnetic mines in their wake. The mines would explode against alien hulls, causing damage that disabled rather than destroyed. Zephyrian crews would find themselves stranded in space with damaged life support systems and broken communication equipment. Rescue operations would require multiple ships and stretch fleet resources while creating the impression that humans could strike anywhere at any time. On Earth, the resistance had grown into a complete shadow government that controlled more territory than the official Zephyrian occupation forces. Former Secretary of Defense Patricia Wells coordinated global operations from a command bunker that connected resistance cells on every continent through quantum communication systems built from stolen alien technology. The situation reports from around the world all tell the same story, Patricia announced during a meeting with regional commanders. The aliens control major cities and military installations, but we control everything else. They cannot move supplies without our permission. They cannot communicate without us listening. They cannot plan operations without us knowing about them. The aliens had made the mistake of underestimating human infrastructure and logistics systems. Zephyrian forces could destroy human military units, but they could not replace the complex networks of transportation, communication, and resource distribution that human civilization had built over centuries. Every road and railroad and power line on Earth had been mapped and studied by humans who knew exactly how to disrupt alien operations. Dr. Rachel Stone had achieved the breakthrough that would tip the balance of the entire war. Working from a laboratory hidden deep in an abandoned mine, she had solved the puzzle of Zephyrian defensive technology. Their quantum shields are nearly perfect against energy-based weapons, Rachel explained to the assembled resistance leadership. But the shields operate on principles that make them vulnerable to kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The solution required combining human engineering with alien power sources. Railguns built from Earth materials but powered by captured Zephyrian reactors could accelerate solid projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. At those velocities, even small pieces of metal could punch through alien shields and armor, like they were made of paper. But the psychological impact of the new weapons was more important than their destructive power. When human forces began destroying Zephyrian vehicles and installations with seemingly primitive kinetic weapons, the aliens began to question their technological superiority. If humans could defeat advanced alien defenses with simple metal projectiles, then perhaps Zephyrian technology was not as advanced as they believed. The end of the war began not with a great battle but with a simple communication. Admiral Krixvar received a transmission on his personal command frequency that bypassed all military channels and security systems. The message came directly from Commander Jake Martinez, speaking from the bridge of the human flagship Defiance. Admiral Krixvar, Jake's voice was calm and respectful, but carried the confidence of someone who knew he held a winning position. I believe it is time for our two species to have an honest conversation about the future. The meeting took place in neutral space between the human and alien fleets. Both commanders brought their most advanced ships, but neither side activated weapons or raised shields. The conversation that followed would be remembered by historians of both species for generations. Your people fight without rational thought, Admiral Krixvar stated as he studied the human commander through the communication link. You sacrifice lives for no strategic gain. You resist when surrender would preserve more of your population. That is where you fundamentally misunderstand us, Jake replied. We fight with perfect logic based on human values. We fight because the alternative is unacceptable to us. Not just death, but the loss of our freedom to determine our own future and make our own choices. Jake transmitted a data package to the Zephyrian admiral that contained detailed mathematical projections created by Dr. Carl Johnson's analysis team. The data showed computer models of what would happen if the Zephyrian Empire continued to attempt occupation of Earth. The projections were devastating in their simplicity. Human resistance would never end regardless of casualties or setbacks. Every generation would produce new fighters with new tactics and new determination. The psychological strain on Zephyrian forces would spread throughout their empire, as other conquered species learned that resistance was possible and effective. Your own medical reports show that prolonged combat against humans is causing psychological breakdown in your soldiers, Jake continued. That breakdown will spread to other units and other worlds. Species you conquered years ago will begin to rebel when they see that the mighty Zephyrian Empire can be challenged. The mathematical models showed the inevitable conclusion. The Zephyrian Empire would collapse within 50 years, not from military defeat, but from psychological exhaustion. The cost of holding Earth would drain resources from other worlds. The example of human resistance would inspire rebellion throughout the galaxy. The empire that had conquered 47 star systems would destroy itself trying to control one planet. You are offering us a choice, Admiral Krixvar realized as he studied the projections. The alien commander had spent his entire life believing that superior force could overcome any resistance. Now he was learning that some enemies became stronger when attacked and more determined when threatened. "I am offering you what humans value most," Jake replied. "The freedom to choose your own path forward. You can continue this war and watch your empire tear itself apart, or you can accept that some species cannot be conquered and find a different way to interact with the galaxy." The Zephyrian withdrawal began 3 days after the meeting. Massive alien ships lifted off from Earth carrying soldiers who had learned to fear an enemy they could not understand. As the fleet departed for unknown regions of space, they left behind something unprecedented in their empire's history. They left behind a world they could not conquer and a people they could not break. In the months that followed the Zephyrian retreat, other worlds began to rebel against alien rule. The empire that had seemed invincible for 1,000 years crumbled, as species after species chose freedom over security and resistance over submission. The galaxy learned that even the mightiest empire could fall when confronted by people who refused to accept defeat. And on Earth, as humans rebuilt their world and reached toward the stars with renewed purpose, they carried with them a truth that had saved their species. Sometimes the greatest strength is not the ability to destroy your enemies, but the refusal to let your enemies destroy what you value most.